Good evening, everybody. It's a privilege to be to host a very, very beautiful and eminent people in the panel today. Without doing much ado, I just go on to introduce our speakers. First and foremost, let me introduce a person who is an executive secretary of COMEDCare, Consortium of Medical Engineering and Dental Colleges for 16 years, 34 in various capacities as President, Dean, and Principal of Medical Education in MS Ramaya Group, former Chancellor of Sri Devaraj Aras Academy of Higher Education and Research in Kolar. He is none other than Dr. Shivaraman Kumar. Welcome you, sir. And the next person is no less than personality, which has been a member of drafting committee for the National Education Policy 2020. During the period of 1990 to 2008, he worked with UNICEF as Senior Education Specialist, Senior Program Coordinator, and Deputy Country Representative. Prior to this, 1975 to 1990, he was a member of Faculty of National Council of Education, Research and Training, NCRT, New Delhi. Welcome, Professor Ramachandran, sir.
Thank you.
So let's start our day with a question posted to Ramachandran, because he is the one person who can answer this question very, very correctly, because he's worked with NEP in a very close quarters. So the first question for you, sir, is on assessment, because we are having the topic as assessment. In future, assessment is something which we have to work on. All the principals and teachers will agree with me that this is one area where we need to look very, very strongly. So when focusing on assessment of learning, assessment as learning, assessment for learning, taking these three aspects, how to handle students during the digital divide. And also, we have to check with the student diversity also in assessment. Professor Ramachandran, it's your time now.
Thank you for the generous introduction. I also thank Next Element for giving me the chance to be with you. Well, we are talking future, therefore obviously the National Education Policy 2020 comes into picture. There are two words in policy which are relevant to assessment. Number one, holistic development of a child or a student. Then flexibility in curricular, pedagogical, and assessment procedures. Now, first one is what you call holistic development. What does that mean? It means the development of a student or his capacity in all areas, that is intellectual, aesthetic, physical, social, emotional, ethical, and moral, all in integrated form. The message coming out of this is the student assessment should be for all these areas and not just one subject area or two subject areas. We must assess developments or capacities in regard to intellectual development, emotional development, aesthetic development, physical development, ethical development, moral development, and so on. So this is one message. Now, in the previous session, Dr. Sandhya mentioned, quite often assessment is not done properly. I'll give an example of that. She also said sometimes it is a teaching learning process which creates problem. I go to school very often. Before pandemic, I was in a school in Haryana, a very remote area. The teacher was teaching 4-digit subtraction. After sitting 20 minutes at the back row, I thought I must find out how much children have learned. So I went on the blackboard and wrote 82 minus 47. There are 42 children in the classroom. 12 of them got it correctly. And those who got correctly, I asked them, how did you get this? They said, sir, of course, Hindi, I'll make it in English. From 2, we can't subtract 7. So I borrow 1. They didn't say I borrow 10. So when I borrow 1 and then join this, it becomes 12. 12 minus 7, 5. And then since I borrowed, the tens becomes less. 7 minus 4, 3. Then a girl got up and said, sir, my social studies teacher says borrowing is a very bad habit. But my mathematics teacher says you borrow. I got what I wanted. I told them, you are not borrowing at all. You are doing something different. That is what is called regrouping. I told them what you do is 82 is 8 tens plus 2 ones. You regroup this as 7 tens plus 12 ones. So 12 ones minus 7 ones, you get 5 ones. And 7 tens minus 4 tens, you get 3 tens. So the answer is 35. After doing this, I gave 3 more items for testing. And I found out of 42, 29 got it correctly. First, it was only 12 students. When the methodology was correct, they got much more, 29. So based on the first assessment, I would have said, oh, they have not learned. The second assessment made me think that they were not at fault. It was the methodology of teaching, as Dr. Sandhya was talking about it. And this is one aspect that therefore the policy talks one thing, that as Dr. Kalpana Mohan rightly said, 3 aspects: assessment of learning, quietly summative in nature; assessment for learning, very frequent, formative assessment; then assessment as learning, that through assessment we can also make a student extrapolate what has been done. Like the example I gave, 4-digit subtraction, say 8, 8, 8, 8 minus 4, 4, 4, 4. Symbol subtraction. But if I slightly change 8, 8, 8 to 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, then you find there is regrouping at the ones place, slightly more difficult. I can change again 8, 8, 4, 4, then 4, 6, 7, 8. Now you find again it becomes more difficult. So this is what we call assessment as learning. That what is learned in 2-digit subtraction, we can extrapolate that and regrouping at the tens place, at the hundreds place, at the thousands place. And this is the principle of what we call assessment as learning. Now, according to the policy, the purpose of learning in future, assessment in future, will be to facilitate student learning and attainment by students of all expected learning outcomes. To help the teacher and student and the entire schooling system continuously revise teaching learning process, that is learning contents, pedagogical approaches, and learning assessment procedures to optimize learning and development of children. Therefore, in future, the thrust of assessment will be on 2 things. One is shifting from assessment that is purely summative in nature and primarily test rote memorization skills to one that is more regular and formative, more competency based, promotes learning and development of students, and tests higher order skills such as analysis, critical thinking, and conceptual clarity. I'll come back to that later. Now, the theme of this is post-pandemic challenges, student assessment. In the post-pandemic, two major challenges. One is there is a learning loss suffered by majority of students because they could not afford to have devices through which they can access online learning. About 50% students might have got learning devices. They could attend online classes. But a large proportion of students in villages and rural areas, remote areas, did not have this facility, so they suffered severe learning loss. So the challenge before us now is how to remedy this learning loss through an effective learning enhancement program. This is one. Second, how do we make it competency-based? The term competency-based means a student progresses from one level to other on mastery of one competence, then move on to next level of competence, then move on to next level of competence. And in a classroom after post-pandemic scenario, we will have students with variety of prerequisites or lack of prerequisites. Some may be advanced, some average, not in ability in terms of acquisition because of loss of learning, and some could be very great loss suffered. Now, what kind of assessment should we do it? Obviously, we must aim at a competency-based learning. So in the main challenge facing the post-pandemic school situation is this. What are the ways of doing it? We must, in other words, the second word comes in, flexibility. Some students might tell us, sir or madam, I'm not ready to take test today because I lost a lot of learning. Can I take my test after 2 weeks? That flexibility we ought to avoid. In other words, assessment on demand, assessment according to the convenience of students, according to their perception of attainment. That is a kind of flexibility you're talking now in assessment. Then, of course, flexibility in terms of approaches to assessment as well. Project-based assessment, experiential learning-based assessment, and so on. So therefore, future scenario would move towards a competency-based education program, by which we mean tremendous amount of flexibility. In other words, assessment that are customized to the levels of learners. So this is a major challenge you'll be having, the 2 or 3 categories of students. I think the 10 minutes, initial 10 minutes I have is almost over. So I will stop at this stage and then on to the moderator.
Actually, I lost time because it was so interestingly put across, Dr. Professor K. Ramachandran. The example what you gave in the classroom, how the children understood when the concept was clearly mentioned, regrouping of subtraction, was really, really wonderful, because the kids need to know what they are learning rather than getting it in a rote memory pattern. Wonderfully put. Thank you so much for that input. Now let's move on to Dr. Shivaraman Kumar. We have the pandemic. Actually, Professor Ramachandran also brought into this post-pandemic problems. So let's go into that area. What do you think that the children should learn with the pandemic situation and post-pandemic situation? And are we all ready to accept new education policy post-pandemic too? Dr. Shivaraman.
Thank you for that question. You see, see a great opportunity that has been brought in by the pandemic. If people had only realized, as Professor Ramchandran and earlier, what has been the suffering of Indian students, a overloaded, insensitive, irrelevant curriculum so far. Attempts at correcting it so far have been only cosmetic. For the first time in the NEP document of 2020, we see out of the box thinking. Excellent. Teachers needed time to reorient themselves. What more can you get other than this wonderful opportunity of pandemic where teachers could have relearned and re-unwound the potential in them? Now, before we talk of assessments on based of the formative assessments of various levels that Professor Ramchandran so crystal clear said, let us understand our Indian students are a confused lot. They have an identity crisis because of the intense competition. Everyone involved, whether it is the child, the teacher, the management, and the parents, have to reframe their mind before we talk of any post-pandemic learning, whether any of us have had in this. See, it is very, very unfortunate that students in schools these days get 100 out of 100 in languages, social science, everything. What kind of assessment are we going through? It is something like this. It is more a rat race to get those magic numbers. Because of this, students are into all egged on by parents, pushed on by institutions to have that one upmanship. We are losing out on educating. Our children are confused they have a dilemma between learning and livelihood. Whether they should learn, now we need to have a concept change. Parents should be supportive. Don't expect those magical 100 all the time. That is why, as a medical teacher over 35 years, the incidence of depression and attempted suicide is as high as 20% across first year MBBS students. Because these students are the cream who come with magic numbers of 90, 98 and all that. And for the first time in a medical exam, when they get grounded to 50, 55, they feel they are really being either taken out or they have made a mistake in coming here. Because in medical curriculums where there is viva, practical, skill assessments, and higher order assessments, that is where they suffer. Now, all along in school education, our children are taught irrelevantly the same portion, whether they have a passion for arts, whether they have a passion for commerce, whether they have a passion for science. Assessment of a child's aptitude is never a part of our education so far. For the first time, NEP document is talking about some of these aspects, and this pandemic would not have been lost out saying, oh, they have lost out. Yes, there are issues, connectivity, availability of gadgets, certain percentage. A loss of 1 year for the sake of quality learning of our students is worth it. I would say that these children who have gone through the pandemic, suffered a deficit of learning, who will catch up with it next year, there will be brighter products coming out of schools on which wonderful higher education can be built on them. Now, there has been a benign neglect to address these concerns. And what are we talking of? Assessment. Okay, MCQ-based assessment. In every school, the child is taught long essay question, short essay question, very short essay. Ultimately, in every competitive exam, whether it is NEET or CLAT or JEE, they are evaluated by MCQ. A well-structured MCQ is a holistic assessment which can cover a wide range of topics. It's not rote learning. It should be application based. It should stimulate the students' recall ability to reconnect with this learning and answer. Now, they want to give up MCQ based assessment after pandemic. It is what to fill this deficit. Schools teach differently. Children are evaluated differently in competitive exam. There is a mushrooming boom of tutorials and learning higher centers. You visit anybody's home, nobody is keen on knowing which school the child goes, which tutorial he or she attends. We have reduced education in our mad rush for numbers. Let us spend the next few months to reorient our teachers. Teachers think it is only a profession. The passion has evaporated. You see that deep passion when Professor Ramchandran goes to your school. He gets on from the last bench and organizes a different modality which may strike and be appealing to students. That kind of passionate teachers, where are they? A very minuscule, with all humility and respects to all the teachers in the group who are listening. Please rekindle the passion as teacher. The highest respect in society should be for teachers. Don't become creatures of habit. Don't get bogged down by management pressures. Managements, they don't create an atmosphere to stimulate learning. They only manage, the so-called, their sense of management is atrociously exposed during the pandemic. Even high medical colleges of repute had not invested in ITB related services, networking and bandwidth, with all surfaced now. The best of teachers from across institutions can be reached out by online teaching. No school should be blessed or cursed to have a best teacher or a very, very mediocre teacher. Online teaching should be a process which is a blessing of the pandemic and should be taken forward. This is my one sincere feel. If we don't reorient parents, teachers, and students, stimulate students, you should learn to become what you are. That is how we can develop a knowledge society. Let's forget numbers. We are not in a Western world with 10 or 12 students in a class. Our teachers have enough of numbers on their hand. Let us train them. Let us orient them. Clarity of concept. Let's talk of evaluations in a totally different, relevant way later. I would leave it at this.
Fantastic. Actually, that's one of the very, very big problem. The teachers are not teachers. They've been asked to do things which normally we don't want to. As a teacher, I want my children to learn from me rather than getting coached by me to get 100 marks. Fantastic. It was a very beautiful insight you brought in. So, unfortunately, we need to actually stop it and come back on that. So let us go back to Professor K. Ramchandran. Sir, you have been telling about higher order thinking skills and how to assess on the basis of higher order thinking skills and how to assess the system itself, how it has been functioning. Also, by assessing the system, how to assess the students, and also the learning or education processes, how it can be converted to do proper assessment. Let's go and ask Professor Ramchandran, because this is one question everybody's really thinking about, and also echoed by Dr. Shivaraman also about how the teachers can be equipped to handle the children. If the assessments are fine, when instead of expecting what the children to write, if they inspect it, then what is the kind of assessment we should go on? Professor Ramchandran.
The assessment would depend a lot on the learner characteristics. For instance, the future generation, even current generation of students belong to a generation born and raised in technology-rich environment. Second, most of these students will use technologies that have not been invented so far to do the job. We don't know what will happen to the mobile phones in 5 years' time. Then many of these students will enter jobs which don't exist now, new jobs. Group which are tethered to internet and so on. So we'll be facing these students through teaching learning process, including assessment. Now, what are we going to assess? My best teacher now is my 7-year-old granddaughter.
Who is in US?
That she, when she was the age of 5, came to India for the first time from US. I asked her, where are you coming to? She said, I am coming to India. But I said, which city? He said, Grandpa, I don't know that. My grandson gave a cue to her, you are going to the capital city of India. The moment she got this, she said, Grandpa, give me 15 seconds. Opened her iPad, Google search, capital city of India, New Delhi. So, Grandpa, I am coming to New Delhi. Now, before pandemic, when she was in kindergarten, I asked her, what is 10 plus 20 plus 30 equal to? She said, Grandpa, give me 10 seconds. Opened her iPad, press the button 10 plus 20 plus 30. He said, Grandpa, answer is 60. So my son asked me, what kind of assessment we should do with this girl? She is used to iPad and uses that. I gave her a question, something like this. I'm answering the question Dr. Mohan asked this. I said, there is a river. On one side of the river, there is a village. On the other side of the river, there is a school. Students from the village cross the river using a boat and go to school every day. There were 3 students, one weighing 10 units, other weighing 20 units, other weighing 30 units. So total weight is 10 plus 20 plus 30, 60 units. So I told her, using a big boat which can take 60 units or more, these 3 children came to the school. And they finished classes, ready to go home in the evening, crossing the river again, using a boat. But the big boat capsized. And there was only a small boat, which could take only 30 units of weight, not 60. That means all 3 children cannot go back together. I asked her a question. How all 3 can reach home by using a boat which can take weight of 30 units? Application based on the knowledge, 10 plus 20 plus 30 is equal to 60. She took 50 minutes, came back to answer. Grandpa, we can do that. I said, how do you do it? Grandpa, the boat can take 30 units of weight. So therefore, first, the child weighing 10 units and 20 units will go together and cross the river. Then I asked how the 30 will go. There is no boat. She said, yes, that's correct. That 10 and 20 come to the shore and 10 remains on the shore, 20 goes back. Then after 20 goes back, 20 remains on the school side and 30 goes to village. Then 10 comes back with the boat. Then 10 and 20 go, 5 times. But she got the answer. This is what we call complex problem solving. That she did the task of complex problem solving. Next day, I asked her the same question again. In a slightly different manner, she gave me the answer within 15 seconds. She took 15 minutes the previous day, now 15 seconds. I asked her, how did you do this test now in 15 seconds? She said, Grandpa, I remembered what you said yesterday. It is in my memory. So I only had to recall that and then give that. Now a message here for you and I as student assessment practitioners, that if you ask a complex problem solving question, make sure that question is never repeated. We should ask a new unfamiliar learning environment based question. The challenge before us as teachers is never repeat a question which is asked. Even though it is complex problem solving, it becomes simple recall, memory oriented question if you repeat that. So we should search for new assessment tool for testing complex problem solving. I just give an example, since time is short, I can't give more examples. The next element is we teach critical thinking and assess it. Creative thinking and assess it. Like creative thinking, you might ask, how do you assess? Ask students of your school to design logo of your school. And there are 40 children, you'll get 40 different types of logos. No answer, no one answer, many answers. And you can see their creativity in designing the logo. These are some of the methods you can use. Similarly, communication skills, both in writing and speaking. A question may be asked here that you are asked to explain a concept to a layman group, 20 people. How do you do it? That from technical knowledge to layman's knowledge. Did you have a chance to do this? If they say yes, ask them, explain how did they do it? This is one of the ways of testing communication skills and so on. So communication skills, sometimes coordination and collaboration with others. That is the reason we don't play individual sports games in the beginning. We give group games like volleyball, basketball, soccer, and so on, and not tennis, badminton, and so on. They can come later. First, let there be teamwork practice before we go individual competition. Then, a few of these things are the ones now we should teach for and assess. So the entire assessment process will change. Whether it is MCQ or essay type, the purpose would be that you assess complex problem solving ability, critical thinking process, creative thinking process, communication skills, ability to be a team player, and so on. And these will change the entire assessment procedures. Now, then, in other words, we are trying to test, in addition to subject area expertise, I'm not going into detail on that, and skills like this. That is the reason the policy is talking, as Dr. Shivaram Kumar said, multidisciplinary learning at the secondary level onwards. What would that happen? A student may opt for physics. The next subject may be music, aesthetic sensibility. The next subject may be physical education. Or the next subject may be a vocational course. Tremendous flexibility in choice of course, and therefore we need to create assessment tools for variety of these things. So the future is depending on this, that don't test only rote learning. Can we test complex problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, communication skills, teamwork, and so on? And that is a change. For that, as Dr. Shivaram Kumar rightly said, the policy talks about reducing curricular content. About 30-40% of what we teach are irrelevant. Throw that out of our curriculum and spend more time on activities that will promote complex problem solving ability, critical thinking, creative thinking, teamwork, and so on. So the policy talks about reducing curricular content to a great extent and focus more on this and the learning assessment of this aspect. Again, my time is up. In case I get a time, I'll come back again. Thank you, Dr. Mrs. Mohan.
Yeah, that's really a very, very valid point. Skill-based teaching is something is really important than content-based teaching. It's fantastically put, really great insight. I think all the principals and the people who are there will agree to it. Fantastic. You can see a lot of thank yous and thumbs ups are coming on your screen, appreciating what exactly just now you said. Let's move back to Dr. Shivaraman. I just want to ask something to you, sir. That is, how everyone, for a student, parent, or any society, everybody, can be reoriented to the madness of getting into numbers, 100%, 70%, etc., and how we can really go into access of grasping of information by the children. And I also add one point there. There is a lot of things are happening. 8 years, 7 years children learning a thing called coding and things like that. As you said, that coaching classes, etc. What is your take on that, Dr. Shivaraman?
You see, first, initially, one assessment of the NEP 2020 document says to add clarity about the new concepts of education to the child and to the parents, there needs to be a counselor in every school. This is an impossible target to achieve, having in mind that we hardly have any structured training for counseling in this country. The NEP also talks of creating school groups, not individual schools. Let us target developing one or few teachers in these schools to take up counselor training. 20 hours of online structured training can give additional competency for teachers to be able to serve as counselors, introduce the newer concepts, and eliminate the mad rush for numbers and marks. This is one. NEP, unfortunately, having promised so much in so many varieties, has missed out on what is done in the rest of the world. If Singapore has become one of the hubs of education, it is because they evaluate the aptitude of every child at the school level and sort them out so that they will thrive in the area that they have been. Now, over the last 4 years, Educational Rating Assessment Foundation, NGO has started an aptitude test. Aptitude tests in India were available, each costing 12,000, 15,000. Now, this educational rating assessment, they call it MARK, is a 2-hour online where it basically tests the foundation skills. What is the foundation skill? The literacy, the numeracy, etc. Then it tests the higher order, critical thinking, problem solving. Do they have social and emotional skills to become a part of a healthcare service? Some amount of empathy and cultural awareness, societal needs must be, all these are tested, and 4 or 5 courses are recommended. 50,000 government school children have been offered this aptitude assessment for free in Karnataka. For other private schools, the fee is kept at a very nominal amount of around 500 or around that. Aptitude assessment, sort out, identify. See, my mind goes back to the wonderful opening remark that Justice Kare had written when he headed the 11-judge bench in the TMAI landmark judgment. 11 judges sitting together, first time in Supreme Court, about education. The slow-moving machinery of the government and limited resource, doling out an irrelevant curriculum, cannot tap the true potential of the Indian. It can only produce pen pushers. There's an opening preamble. This NEP document, to be made relevant, you should give teachers, students time to reorient. It is a new concept. Post-pandemic, don't flush the subject matter like you flush things in a toilet. Children, you heard Sandhya saying how to reorient to cognitive learning. Give children that incubation time to switch over to a newer concept. Now, teachers must upgrade their skills as counselors, and teachers should themselves learn how to become relevant teaching, problem-based teaching, or problem-solving ability. These concepts should come. Let us take this as a breather. A well-trained athlete. I can also run with my 100 kilos, but I can't call myself an athlete. Only with the regular training, I can become an athlete. Similarly, a teacher should train and retrain to become relevant. You don't need a nuclear bomb to destroy a country. Destroy the education system and you have destroyed that country. Please, teachers, build that passion in you. Managements, give that support, that nourishment for teachers to improve their skills, and that is the way the institution can grow. All other, whatever has been thought of by 11 wonderful, brilliant academists under the Kasturirangan team can be complemented. Only you can expect a seed to bloom into a plant or anything only if you prepare the soil. You have not prepared the soil, and added to that you are trying to rush through introducing NEP. It will be a bigger disaster only to be abandoned. That should not happen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shivaram. Yes. There are a few questions. I think it's going to bring in a lot of information from our speakers today. Yeah. One of the questions from Mr. Venkatraman Chitturi, Principal of EduAsia. He has a question. I think Professor Ramchandran can take it. Will the formative assessment be standardized across Indian schools under NEP? Or does it provide some flexibility to individual schools? Thank you, Venkatraman, sir. These are wonderful questions. Professor Ramchandran, please go ahead.
Answer to that is very simple. Flexibility to individual schools. The policy talks about autonomy to institutions and teachers. The teachers can decide what kind of assessment tools they would need, which may not be the same. Like the same competence can be assessed through different tools and mechanisms. And therefore, the policy talks a great deal of flexibility in terms of designing learning assessment tools and autonomy to the schools. Having said this, I think I should respond to what Dr. Shivaram Kumar said now. What the policy is talking about is aptitude test, sometimes at a secondary level, and also for admission to higher education institutions, twice in a year, not even just once a year. And something like our SAT, that each student, according to their desire, can take up the aptitude test and put this into a credit bank system. This is one. Second, a major change is going to take place. Currently, the board exams are done only once a year, and also only once for all. What we are now talking is, don't make it high stake by having exam only once. We can have exam twice. A student who wants to improve scores from the main examination may be allowed to take the next examination as well. That means board exams need not be what we call the high stake. It can be made much more simpler. The third recommendation, which is very important for, again, is the progress report card will now indicate learning and development relating to all aspects of all domains of learning: intellectual, physical, emotional, social, aesthetic, ethical, moral, and so on. That will be a comprehensive card which will indicate the unique ability of every child. As Professor Shriram Raishi said, that child may not be very good at mathematics, but excellent in music, excellent in performing art. The progress report card should indicate this, that here is a girl or a boy who may not be that good at mathematics or science, but excellent in music, performing art, and so on, or history. That is the reason we are talking. You can have science. There is no hard separation between science, arts, humanities, social science, and so on. You can have one subject from science, another from humanities, other from the arts, other from vocational program, other from any other area according to children's choice. So the final answer is tremendous flexibility in choice of assessment tools and assessment for the school, as long as they deal with the defined learning outcomes, such as complex problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, and so on. Thank you for asking this question.
Actually, very well answered. The question is good. Answer was all the more very good. Yes, we need to have that kind of flexibility. Is very important. Very true. There is another question from Umesh Prasad Dev Ekpehil. He asked a question: what would you say to guest paper from which all questions come? I don't know, the guest paper, maybe the model questions or whatever, I'm not very sure. And also it continued as even at the underground graduate level by all the state board and central board, etc. That's what his question is. Dr. Shivaraman, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, when education fits into a studyable pattern, that is why how many of these people, what will be the probable question? They take the previous 2 years or 4 sessions papers and work out a combination and work it out. To eliminate this, a very, very simple, thanks to information technology, we have, when I have been conducting evaluations across India in 300 centers for more than 1.5 lakh students, what we do is we create a very robust question bank which has all the capabilities of testing. It is created by select test authors, not from one institution, from more than 5 or 6 institutions. Then it is validated. The item is analyzed by administering it as a test to a target student group. Weak items eliminated and all that. Branch-wise, everything. On the day of exam, a question paper is randomly generated by the system. You can say not more than one question for any topic. The difficulty level can be high, medium, or low, and the system generates a paper. Now here, if there are 4 questions from the previous exam, if somebody has deliberately added, Only because this kind of what is it, mixed match fellows would have avoided those 4 questions. Oh, it becomes a leaked paper. Now, coming back to this, do we have a structured evaluation, which was the earlier question? The bias should be eliminated. Bias, which is plaguing our education, should be eliminated, and that can be best done by MCQ and machine-based assessments.
Wow, that's a very beautiful answer for the question, which was well put. Probably, I think I will be really happy to have such kind of thing. Difficulty level based questions, like how you play games,
Simple.
But second level kind of. Yeah.
Depending on the target group, you see, we always have the regular students and the odd batch students. The difficulty level is titrated. Difficult 10 questions, moderate 40, easy 10. You can titrate it. It's a very simple one. Software called Python. If you use the Python software, it will extract your paper. It will ensure that crowding of questions from one topic can be avoided. It's an excellent tool, and all principals should practice. No teacher should be asked to set a paper on the morning in front of the teachers, pick a paper, and every school has a Xerox machine. 30, 40, or 50 copies are made and distributed to the students on the day of exam. You practice it, how structured our evaluation will become.
Very good. I mean, it is possible also. It's not an unpracticable thing also. Absolutely. I think people should start thinking about it. And there is a question from Shija, Controller of Examination, Gandhi City University. She asks, how could we implement practical courses being taught in an online mode? This is something which she has asked. Thank you, Ms. Shija. Professor Ramchandran, can you please take it?
Very often we do what we call virtual laboratories. I'll give an example. I was a teacher of physics for some time, about 4 years. One thing I could not teach well was the concept of resultant forces. The example normally given is, there is a ship grounded in sea, and two boats want to pull it to the shore. What should be the angle of these two boats vis-a-vis the ship? I could never teach it properly, because you can't create a ship except telling, suppose this is a ship, suppose this is a boat. But with virtual laboratory, I could do it very easily, that you vary the angle of the boats on the screen, and you find at one point the boat moves in a direction you and I want. Now, I am watching the online classes of my grandchildren sometimes. They teach physical education, games playing through online classes. Music, fantastic. Field visits, online classes. Because these classes are meant just for the teacher and the 20 students, 25 students in the class. It is not a centralized lesson. So therefore, it is possible to do this, that practical courses can also be taught through online, but we must have facility at home to experiment with that. Like my grandson is he's about 12 years old now. He plays basketball. They test his basketball shooting ability, and my son was asked to put a ring in the house. And when the lesson comes, he goes down, camera is put on there, and he does it. It's a practical activity. Similarly, carpentry is taught through online. So variety of things can be taught through online, but we must make sure what can be taught through online more appropriately. May not be every topic, but there are topics which are amenable to teaching through remote learning. I think it is possible, and I think we must make an effort to do that in the proper way. And if it is a one-way communication like a television lesson, of course, you can only see it, you can't interact. But the kind of online learning my grandchildren go through are pretty interactive. It's as like a physical classroom. The teacher and the taught answering questions and so on, and experiments shown. And they are asked to replicate experiment, how it is done, including chemical analysis of elements and so on. So it is possible, and it is tried out in many countries, very well done. So, but we must design the lesson and assessment tools properly for that. Like to assess music ability of my grandson who plays trumpet, he's asked to play trumpet for 5 minutes, and there's an assessment done on that. Then my granddaughter, who is 6 plus or 7 now, she is expert in writing the answer on a piece of paper, then uploading that online, and the teacher evaluates that and gets back. So it is possible. It is not that practical subjects cannot be. It all depends upon the way we design the lesson and record it. Thanks for asking this good question.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, in our country also, in India also, there are schools which are doing online physical education and assessment and etc. They are also doing it here. So many schools I have seen them doing it. The one which I am advising, BWIS and BWNS, that is basically which schools they do it. Thank you, Professor. And one more question from Hanuman sir, that he's asking, Dr. Shivaraman was telling about some assessment test about the skills and capability of students. So at what age the children can take this test? That's what he's asking. Hanuman sir is asking that question to Dr. Shivaraman Kumar.
Thank you, Hanuman, for that question. You see, here in Indian education, we decide on the stream of the child at the 8th standard, whether he takes PCM, PCB, or arts, or commerce, everything is decided. It is ideal that we do this at the 8th or even 9th, more than once, to get an objective scoring to indicate to the parents. This will test both the fundamental learning skills, because initially the available aptitude tests commercially available be evaluated. They don't test the core subject knowledge. At the end of it, what do you want to become? I want to become a cardiac surgeon like Dr. Devi Shetty. Excellent. He is motivated. What is your marks in science? 40. That is a total mismatch. So here, fundamental learning, aptitude, skill, problem solving, critical thinking, empathy, so with a holistic need. Now, we have found that some children have a passion to become a police officer. See, the focus can from then on be to make him more orient himself into physical training, into law, into other relevant subjects. The link is, it's called Your Marg, M-A-R-G, Marg. We are showing you the way. Please log into this website, Marg. It'll give you more details on this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shivaraman. It is actually, we can go on and on in this topic. It was so very insightful. And we were learning so many things from the experts like you, Professor K. Ramachandran and Dr. Shivaraman Kumar had made this evening very special to all the educators. Thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you so much, Next Element, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you,
and
thank you all.
Thank you so much.
God bless.